Hello YouTube, Vincent is the next Geo First LD. My first guess was completely right. You can check out the video on the card and go watch my clairvoyance. Also thumbs up the comments I guessed and or wanted Vincent. Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game. Vincent is an extremely cool character, so I'm glad he got an early update. Unfortunately, I don't have many good things to say. I'm doing an analysis of Vincent, giving my perspective having played and completed all JP content from this point forward, and you can check my channel to see that that's the case. I'm going to be highlighting his strengths, weaknesses, other stuff, and most importantly, the content he's going to be viable for going forward. Just as a prelude, and I need to say things so that people don't misinterpret what I'm doing. I love Final Fantasy VII and Vincent, but I'm going to be as objective as possible here, and spoiler, it's mostly negatives. I don't think the devs did their best work here. This isn't blind hate. This is analysis. So if you're a snowflake who can't handle disagreements, you might as well bounce, because this is not for you. I gave Vivian Balthier my objective analysis, and Vincent deserves the same. I am not a shill. I am not a Square Enix shill. I love the game, but I also owe it to everyone in my audience to tell it like it is. I'm not going to try to talk too long, but man, these I got a lot to say. One thing I will say though is that I disavow any form of harassment towards Square Enix. Disagreeing with design choices doesn't mean you need to attack people. If you're angry, then take it out on my comments. I can take it, and I'll clown you back just so you know what it is. And I'm going to be harsh on Vincent, but again, step back. It's just a game. Please, no stupidity during the Square Enix stream. Nobody benefits from that. Anyways, I'm going to structure this similar to my Balthier analysis. I took my time to not rush this and get all my thoughts down, and there's a lot I have to say. But the TLDR is that Vincent got upgrades that would have been fantastic 2 or 3 months ago and would have garnered nothing but praise from me. But this timing, combined with these upgrades, are a major slap in the face. And I'm going to be laying this out why I think that way with concrete reasons and logic. If you're going to get emotional, you might as well just leave. I want to shift the narrative around Vincent as the dust begins to settle down with logic, not hive mind reasonings, okay? On that note, before I continue, be sure to like this video, because this kind of gets spicy. Subscribe to my channel, share this video around, and drop a comment about what you think about Vincent. Only half of my viewers on average are subscribed. I play both JP and Global and upload daily content. Hit the bell as well so you don't miss a single upload. I'll be reading all the comments per usual. Don't start any garbage in my comments. I am really not in the mood. Everything here is my opinion and impression. Don't take it as fact. I screw up all the time. Always double check your sources. Feel free to correct me, and if you're right, I'll acknowledge it immediately. But don't imagine I said something I didn't. Respect is earned, not given. Got it? I swear some of y'all raised different. It's crazy. No home training whatsoever. You get slapped if you came at people with the whatever. Nah, YouTube comments, man, I swear. I'm going to start by listing counter arguments or things that I expect to hear and that I can just squash down immediately because I know people's attention tunes out within the first 5 minutes. So I'm going to hash out things that I think are faulty right now. I'll go in more depth later in the video, so please stick around and hear what I have to say, but let me try and get out most of what I think people are going to say. 1, I don't think Vincent necessarily got a bad upgrade. It was just poorly timed. Over half of the upcoming content, as I'm going to go into great detail over, screws him over. If he had gotten this LD as he is right now before Sephiroth, I'd be singing praises nonstop. So don't think I don't understand this kid, alright? I know the value of his debuff, so don't say that either. I know how it works, and I will explain this later. I understand that he hits hard and can cap brave damage, but capping brave damage in a vacuum means nothing. We have details to consider, team compositions, the bosses, Lufenia orbs, etc. We judge characters by their fight viability and utility in practice, not they can hit 9999 on random Lufenia number 3, alright? I don't want to hear we need to thank Square Enix for trying, we didn't have to get Vincent didn't have to get upgraded, blah blah. If someone gives you a turd as a present and you don't say thanks, you didn't even have to give me a turd, you're unreasonable. If you get, I think what they did to Vincent at this time is unacceptable, and we need to separate the effort towards what was done versus what was actually given, and I don't think they tried very hard on this. I'm not in the business of giving out participation trophies to a corporation who was trying to get our money. Any form of defending Square Enix and not actually anything to do with Vincent as a unit is missing the point entirely. Square Enix isn't going to give any of you guys a check for sucking them off, so stop it. I'm not a shill, alright? This is one of the most frustrating responses because they're doing what they're expected, releasing a character who should be viable. But again, I'm going to lay out that he's going to have a very hard time. Don't praise Square Enix unconditionally. They are not our friends. The same tired just team build argument that's nebulous and doesn't actually have effective examples for future content is a complete cop-out. I don't want to hear that either. If you say he's usable, That's the bare minimum. Of course he's usable. Sarah's usable. Are you guys gonna have the same energy when Sarah comes out in the next couple months? Stay consistent. And even then, usable isn't quite true in the next months. And I really am gonna be hard pressed to see any disagreements on that front. Additionally, I challenge anyone defending Vincent to use him consistently in the next 2 months and upload their runs to prove me wrong. Please prove me wrong. Don't give me garbage Discord napkin theory crafting. I want data, not hypotheticals. Running Vincent in older content to prove he's going to be good is moronic and actually agrees with my point that he should have been released earlier. Alright, we're on the same page if you're running him in old stuff. I super don't want to hear, oh, people gave Balthier and Livia a hard time and they turned out great. Now look at Vincent. These same people who hated those two are hating now. You're mad he didn't get a rework and LD Lord, blah, blah, blah. That... That's probably the most frustrating brain dead take, and there's a lot to unpack there. One, I didn't give Balthier and Vivia a hard time. I praised them and I gave them another objective analysis and showed their strengths. This is a straw man. If you're gonna say people took down Balthier and Vivi and they're also taking down Vincent, so therefore they're wrong, you need to point out individuals who do that. Correlation is not causation. If it's been raining the past 2 hours, is it okay to conclude that it's always going to rain forever? It's the same logic. Just because the past 2 global first LDs came out good does not guarantee that Vincent is going to be the same. Actually think, Jesus Christ, these are independent events with no bearing on each other. Take a stats class or something. On top of that, again, I did nothing but praise Balthier and Vivi, so don't lump me in that group. If you're happy they updated Vincent, good for you. Go put it on your blog, alright? I don't care. That's not really logic or argument as for why I think they lowballed him. If you're gonna come at me with, oh, not everything needs to be meta or broken, Aranea ruined people's expectations, Vincent is niche, I do think Aranea wore people's minds. I've said that almost quite verbatim. But I also believe Vivi and Balthier were successful independent of Aranea. I believe they were balanced releases that provided valuable in upcoming content. This isn't a black and white thing. There's nuance to the criticism. So don't, again, that's another straw man. And any other emotion-based points like that don't address my objective analysis and just hallucinate that I said something when I didn't, I don't want to hear it. Please, because it's going to be... I think I covered everything that I've been seeing around these parts. So if you say anything that I addressed in that past like 5 or so minutes, I'm not going to be happy. Now I'm going to touch on the reception for Vincent pretty quickly. Josh definitely stoked the flames over this one and got everyone riled up, expecting something really amazing. And a second GL first LD was certainly hype, and Vincent is a fan favorite. He's cool. After the reveal, however, people had time to take in the details, and it just wasn't great. This is really how JP releases go. We get the video a couple of hours before, and then we gotta decide right there. There's no instant should you pulls or evaluation. People gotta take time, get a feel for things. And this ambush was probably printed money for them. But I've been lurking Discords and Facebook and Reddit, and it's mostly negative about Vincent. Balthier had about a split between people who knew what they were talking about. There was some blind hate, blind love, which sounds about right for a release. If it's down the middle, that's fine. And there were a lot of people saying, oh, I wish it wasn't Balthier, but that's whatever. There's vocal salt there, but it mostly disappeared once people realized how powerful he was. Vincent, however, this reception has not been great. Again, ambushing the community like this was smart. Drop a hype character with no time for analysis, fresh new costume, new content, free pull to entice people, restrictive abyss with GL first content, and a double whammy of no foresight. We've been conditioned to be hype, and the community fell right in line. Square probably made so much money last night, and they're schmutty dancing on our wallets right now. Surprise, this is how it be sometimes. Sometimes there's buyer's remorse. That being said, let me get into his kit. Adding up his overhead and his limit breaks, he got a total of like 180% attack up, which is hilarious. He got big M Brave boost and self overflow stolen as well, so he can easily hit cap with his stats, combined with his EX buff that increases Brave damage towards debuff targets, and he's going to be hitting hilariously hard. He has Brave Poison, not Sap, on 10% of M Brave on boss turns, and his follow-up is 6 hit after attacking the target with 2 debuffs active. This activates even after his Brave plus, so he actually can't hold Brave safely, which is potentially catastrophic. He's got the debuff high armor, so his debuff numbers are actually pretty nasty. I think he can hit 100% eye Brave on his own. I don't quite know. I'm not going to bother mathing that out because math is for nerds. He did not get LD boards, but again, as I stressed with Balthier and Vivi, LD boards are not analogous to an upgrade. Not having LD boards is not a bad thing. LD boards ultimately only mean that you can use the LD as a call, nothing else. Additionally, they can rework LD boards, so even if you got LD boards and they weren't up to snuff, they could have done that anyways. LD boards are a meaningless metric, and anyone who uses that is, oh, he didn't get LD boards, he didn't get rework. They're coming at this from the wrong angle and disregard them immediately. In practice, he's pretty much the same as Vincent still. He hits harder, and he's got high turn rate with okay damage. He hits really hard though with that attack buff. He's got super crippling debuffs, but they need to be reapplied and managed. You can bring him for debuff shenanigans, provided you can support his lack of damage and turn stealing, but he still needs some help with hard team building. He can still burn out and will likely be swapped for a burst, for instance. He's providing no party buffs, just debuffs. And I have no clue how viable it'll be to remove his speed passives, as his high turn rate is baked into his passives. I think he's honestly the niche that some vocal whiners try to put Balthier in. Absorbs will largely shut him out, which is honestly actually the next 2 months, which I'm going to delve into later. Frame turns with break delay immunity and fixed shield values will pretty much devalue Brave debuffs. Cleanse tanks his damage significantly, as he has to reapply the debuff, and the debuff is applied after his attacks, so then he's not going to lose that follow-up. It's pretty bad. Attack down is okay, but it needs to be effectively stacked to stay good the entire fight, at which point you're also fighting the orb and other team mechanics, and that's a lot of hoops to jump through just to make Vincent work. And I have been talking to Belial, and please subscribe to his channel. He's such a great content creator, great guy, he's creative. He's the guy who frequently rewards realm runs and Brave meme comps, and I'm going to put his message to me on the screen. He gave me my permission. Again, show him love, subscribe to him. Best runner, one of the best, criminally underrated. I've been bouncing a ton of ideas off of him, but even if you're going to sit there and praise Balthier's Brave up, or Brave debuff, even the Brave guys, like, I don't know what you guys are hyping up. He's been doing some testing runs, so I'll plug those as well. Now I'm going to talk about his future viability and the Lufenias he'll be tackling and what he'll potentially handle. This part's going to be long, and it's a shame I'm like 12 minutes in, because this is the crux of why I think that Vincent is underwhelming and undertuned. But like I did with Balthier, I'm going to try and highlight where Vincent could theoretically shine. Rem from Decidia DB, and again, go to his Patreon, join his Discord, it's open. Support DB however way you can, great resource. Rem provided a list where he can quote-unquote handle the orb, and that's been making the rounds. This is an objective list, so I'm going to walk through it and give context to it, but spoiler, it doesn't actually look good. Let's start with Trey's Lost Chapter. There's a sap orb, and this fight still sucks like the chaos. Vincent can handle the orb theoretically, but turns are still tight, and those 2-turn debuffs, his attack down and his Brave down won't help when they're insta-breaking you with high turn rate. You're better off bringing someone with an RF Spear who can protect you better, because it's still a horrible fight. And those of you who were around for the chaos know that fight was horrible. Desh's Lost Chapter is up there as one of my least favorite fights in the game. The orb is to deal AoE HP damage, which is LD and EX do, but not his regular skills. So the turns are incredibly tight. I could barely do it with Paladin Cecil, Celes, and Squall Burst. That's how ridiculous that fight is. And the DPS creep by that point is so ridiculous. They cleanse a lot and get super tanky. You definitely aren't going to bring Vincent here. 9 Lost Chapter, this was a misconception that was cleared up, as they insta-kill any element that isn't Wind or Dark, so disregard that. Vincent's useless there. Strago's Lost Chapter, and keep in mind this is like 4 months out at this point, and Tifa exists. So if you're bringing Vincent for damage, the orb is Holy +1 and Thunder +1. So in theory, Vincent will be stalling the orb +1 on his Thunder attacks. In practice, he's probably more of a hindrance, and you're better off bringing someone else. Rude's Lost Chapter, this is a punching bag stage, so you could probably use him here and get away with it when there's hard carries. But at this point, we have Tidus and Yuna. So do I need to continue on this path? Transcendence 1 final node, because there's a debuff orb, but the end of this Transcendence Center or is it's Fire Absorb. So Vincent is definitely not going to get through that. Transcendence 2 final orb. The first wave is +4 on targets that are hit with fire, thunder, water, or dark damage. So Vincent can theoretically do that. Unfortunately, you have to deal with the rest of the fight. The fight is 3 waves. The second is single target and a delay orb. So Vincent's damage is going to be very yikes there. And the final wave needs 5 debuffs active, but they gain frame buffs. So they're going to override Vincent's stuff anyways. They're selling Ferris there. So sorry, Vince. Act 3, Chapter 4, Part 2. This is Vivi's LD Lufenia. Fire orb, but you need to deal at least 150k in 1 turn, and Vincent won't be able to do that consistently the entire fight, so no. Boss Rush 2, he might be decent here at least. Wave 1 is thunder damage, and Wave 3 is a sap orb. It's the Renoa boss, which is half of the time single target with these spawning ads, and single target is not good for Vincent, especially in Boss Rush. And the first wave, while it is thunder damage, you're probably better off bringing Enchanter and letting Fury and Gladio do their thing. Boss Rush is about efficient turns, and Vincent is not quite that. Boss Rush 3, Vincent, the Lufenia that we got in the Abyss is what got copy-pasted. So Vincent could theoretically handle this as well, but again, Vincent isn't exactly a Boss Rush character, so he could handle the sap, but they're selling Trey there. That's why the bosses did a giant Brave gain, so you can put up Trey's EX debuff and pop them. Last wave needs to have 2 debuffs active. However, they had an aura counter when there were more than three debuffs active. Jesus, I can't talk. And Vincent has 5, so he's actually going to screw you over. So again, not a great pick. So what? Vincent might not be able to handle content like 8 months down the road, theoretically. What about recent content? Well, this doesn't look good either, and this is where I really got irritated at Vincent's release. I try to judge characters on their viability for the next 2 months, and if you can get effective use out of them in that window, I think they're solid. Vincent, however, near completely fails in that regard as well. So let's go over March first. Onion Knights Act 3, Chapter 1, Part 1. The stage is imperil immune, which is going to sink his weakness damage. They have frame turns, so you're not eye brave cheesing the entire fight. It's an ice orb, and Vincent can't deal ice damage, so his skills are elemental. Yikes. And he can't safely hold. This is what really irritated me. Vincent's probably going to be useless here. He can't safely hold Brave unless he brave attacks a target without 2 debuffs. So God forbid his turn is before the recast that petrifies you if you get broken, because he can't dump Brave and get some back because he just doesn't have any refund. Just going to be a dead run. Not a good idea bringing him here. Maybe someone will make it work, but I'm not positive. RCL's Lufenia, he might work here. They gain a ton of frame buff similar to Beatrix Lufenia with different frequency and timing, and they'll push his generics off. It's a dispel orb, so maybe if you throw a Neil spear on him, he could theoretically work. If you don't stun them, they're going to dispel you, so sleep, silence, etc. And he might actually, again, be usable here, but it won't be pretty. He definitely won't be a top pick. That's going to be like, wow, I'm glad I had Vincent. Seodor, Act 3, Chapter 1, Part 2, Thunder Absorb in the entire fight, so you just don't. Vincent's out. Paladin Cecil's raid, Thunder Absorb. Kai's Lost Chapter, while there's nothing here on paper to shut out Vincent, the turn count is 55 turns, and you need a launch. So while nothing will hard counter him, there's actually not much reason to bring him in the first place. And by this time, Squall will be reworked and have 80 and LD boards, and he can sneeze and do more damage than Vincent can dream of. So you're going to be even harder pressed to bring Vincent, especially if you're rationalizing him for damage. And then Transcendence 1, super restrictive. As I said earlier, the center is fire absorb, so you're not using him there. Maybe he can work on the left node to give attack down, but the orb is to deal holy damage, and he's not helping with that. And I recall turns being slightly tight there as well. Optimistically, there's 3 fights he's possible for, which are Onion Knight, Arciela, and Kais, I guess. Maybe Transcendence, one for reaching. But realistically, the only one I think he'll actually work in is Arciela, and he's not a great pick there. So that's 1 month of content where just Vincent isn't favored at all. Meanwhile, Balthier is going to be prospering all month. It doesn't make any sense. Vivi could probably be doing his thing too. This is extremely disappointing, and the people saying just team build, his debuffs are good, are just going to get sidelined by the content that just doesn't even work for him. Let's go into April now. Even more DPS creep is happening with Emperor. He's coming out. Divine Remu. Thunder Absorb, it gains frame terms, so rip eye brave cheese potentially, and it gains frame buffs that you need to shut out with frame debuffs. Lack of mitigation means death. Half of it single target. It's a delay orb as well. There's nothing Vincent's gonna do there. Break delay doesn't count. It has to be delay. Narish's Lost Chapter. Vincent actually might be decent here because they do gain a Eyebrave base shield, I believe. And you need a stun of some sort to stay alive, and they frame their turn. So there's potential debuff clashing, but maybe he could work here. Arenea's Event is Fire Absorb. There's Tola's Heretics, cleanses at certain periods, and there's frame turns, and won't make him a good pick. But he maybe is at least viable, provided you can work around the noob mechanics. But again, we have such insane damage creep that it's going to be hard to justify Vincent here. Trey's Lost Chapter and Boss Rush 3 I outlined before. It's going to be very sketchy putting him in those fights. And so optimistically, there's 4 fights he can do in April, but considering the damage creep and being more realistic, he's probably only a okay pick at best for Eld's Lost Chapter, and which is just 1 fight, and that's just a hard theory craft with me trying. I don't think he'll be good for anything else. And by May, I don't need to keep going. We have Terra, who can again sneeze more damage than Vincent can dream of. If you're treating Vincent as a DPS unit, he's way out of his league there. And if you're treating him as a debuffer, his debuffs aren't really proving worth bringing. Content is still restrictive, and I'm just not gonna bother keep going because it's just ridiculous at this point. Now for really just highlighting my issues with Vincent. It's not necessarily a bad upgrade, but it was very bad timing. Even if Vincent did 400k a turn, he'd still get abused by content as I laid out previously. It's just not friendly for him. This was abysmal timing, as he doesn't have anything to shine on. With Vivi, I could point out like Zana's Lufenia, DPS races, Boss Rush, etc. And for Balthier, I can point out RCL and Seodor's Lufenia, Ultimicia's Burst Lufenia. He's putting in work, and he's in Aura, so you know it's unconditional. He can do whatever. But I can't do the same for Vincent. I'm hard pressed to find it. I really tried. I really tried. But if you listen to my analysis, I can't find anything. Within 2 months, he's just kind of just a dud. That's so disappointing. And the killer is that if he released right before Sephiroth, I would have nothing but praise. I've said this like twice already. He'd be good in the Lightning Raid, Cam Lost Chapter for attack down stacking, Reno's event for Eyebrave shenanigans, and pairing with Lightning and Reno and attack down not to get whacked by the boss. It's the Sephiroth Heretic for neutering the imps, especially their shields. Are you kidding me? He would have been a god there. Rude's event for AoE damage and shield nerfing. And 3 Turks in 1 month would have been great marketing. Well, that's such a whiff. I don't get it. Cloud Raid, again, for the shield. Solid damage. Beatrix Lufenia, he's been proven to work there. Zionist Lufenia, he would have torn those shields apart again and also helping the damage race. He would have been usable in the Fury Mission dungeon. I don't know about X-Death or Diablos or Boss Rush. He might not have been a little sketchy there. And he's been a monster in Caius Lufenia and Guy's Lufenia. And he's been viable for Penelo's Lufenia and even gone through Jack's Lost Chapter. So don't tell me that I don't understand Vincent. I hold the devs fully responsible for placing him here as he is. It felt like a lazy cash grab and it needs to be called out. You saw, how many of this? 1, 2, I don't even know. Like 10 different fights he would have been amazing in. And we got him way later as he is now. It's just embarrassing and lazy. Vivi and Balthier had great timings to mix up the meta with tons of future viability, and they couldn't do the same for Vincent, which bugs me to no end. This is how releases in JP normally go. No time to analyze. We don't know what future content's coming, except we do have the ability to see what content is coming and think about how Vincent's going to fit in. Again, Josh hyped this so hard, and he primed everyone to want to pull, and I'm predicting a lot of buyer's remorse. They printed so much money, but I think everyone isn't going to blindly pull for Global First anymore, and they ultimately shot themselves in the foot. The Abyss did a horrible job of selling Vincent. Single target bosses and cleanse along the way. It just showed off all his shortcomings. They didn't even bother changing the music. They could have just thrown some Final Fantasy VII music in there. Instead, they just copy-pasted the first wave of Boss Rush 3 for the Lufenia. This and the Balthier Lufenia, again, felt uninspired and lazy compared to Perfectum, which I loved. With Vincent, if we're treating him as a damage dealer, he has way too much baggage. 4 generic debuffs and 1 framed. He's hitting hard, but next month, and I hate these character comparisons because there's always nuance, but if you're just bringing him for damage, Onion Knight, Squall, Seodor are going to shmoney dance on him from the damage department, and it's hard to justify bringing Vincent. His 160k a turn skills is theoretical best, but if we compare that to other damage dealers' theoretical best, it pales in comparison. If they were gonna go down the damage route, they should have done a lot more. But even then, the timing sucked because he's just gonna get shut out so hard in the next couple months. And if we're gonna treat him as a debuffer, attack down and Eyebrave down is dependent on the boss and their mechanics and the orb, etc. And he needs stacking to maintain his relevance. Defense down is probably the best part, but you have to deal with his other 4 generics and hope he isn't shut out. If they were going down the debuff route, they should have done more to make sure he didn't get shut out of so much stuff. But in here we have it feels like they went halfway. Eyebrave cheese, again, as I showed from Belial earlier, is not even being valued by the guy who does a lot of Eyebrave meme runs. It feels like they just slapped this together and thought it was okay. How would we be treating Vincent if we knew he was coming and had months of data plus analysis? Is anyone defending Vincent going to keep this same energy for Sarah? Because it seems like most of the community has correctly concluded she's a mess. I would love to be proven wrong. Show me consistent Vincent use over the next few months. Don't cop out and say he's niche. Stick to your guns and get him through content. Show his value. I'm certainly going to try my hardest as well because I want skin in the game, I like the character, but I ultimately think Square Enix dropped the ball entirely hard and they need to know that. Don't suck up to them. Can't emphasize it enough. I understand that he is a debuffer. I understand that he's not there to do damage, but he has a hard time justifying his presence, and on top of that, regardless of what you think about his role, he's just getting shut out for the next 2 months largely. That's such a garbage release. I don't get it. If he wasn't shut out, maybe I can make a better case for him and his utility. And again, I laid out the fights he would have been good for previously. So if you go back and do fights that he was good in the past, you're pretty much agreeing that he would have benefited coming out there, but he's not going to be able to shine, and that is bad. Regardless of what you think about Vincent's kit, he's not going to be able to shine, and that is a failure of a release. In closing, I think Vincent is subpar, below average, and nearly dead on arrival going forward. If you want to go back and run some Lufenia, Vincent will be solid. They release him at a time where he won't be very useful going forward. They should have either released him earlier, as he is now. That would have been cool. Again, I can't say it enough. I am ready to praise Vincent, but he is just unusable, mostly. Or, if they wanted to release him now, they should have leaned harder into either damage, debuffing, or both. Give him a way to be a good pick in the upcoming few months. They didn't do that at all. Maybe Aura Imperil or something. I don't know. I'm not a designer, but I can see a spade. I can call it what it is, man. If you disagree with my takes, say so in the comments so I can subscribe to your YouTube channel and watch your Vincent runs going forward. In a month, I'll do a public apology stating how wrong I was about Vincent and showcase all the people who proved his worth in current content going forward. Please, do it. Prove me wrong. I would love to be wrong. I want to praise Vincent, but I'm just not seeing it. Don't hit me with emotional crap and platitudes. I already lined out earlier in the video stuff I don't want to hear that doesn't make any sense, alright? I understand Vincent. Got it? It's just content does not favor him, and that is a failure. If he's good on paper but can't do content, then he's bad. Alright? If you have a hard time saying that, the door is over there. That's it. I've almost talked for like what, 26 minutes. Be sure to like this video, because it's gonna get spicy. Subscribe, share this video around. This should shut down, this should hopefully reformat the narrative around Vincent right now, because we don't need to be talking about what he can do. We need to be talking about what he will do. Alright? I'll be reading everything. Drop a comment about your thoughts on Vincent. If you imagine I said something I didn't and admit that in public, good luck, because needs the garbage to stop, man. And don't uncritically play Square Enix, man. They messed up here and they need to know it. Alright? Don't try and bait us with tactics like this, with coming at us sideways with a character that isn't even going to be good. But don't harass anybody either. Alright guys, it's just a game. Chill out. But we need to be realistic and talk about how they messed up here. Geo first does not equal good. And I know people are probably having some buyer's remorse and they're suffering cognitive dissonance. But Vincent needs results. And if you have counter arguments with logic and reasoning to the points I laid out, I want to hear those, not platitudes. All right, it's really going to irritate me because people arguing around Vincent and saying, I talked about this earlier. I need to just cut this off. Thanks again, guys. Remember, like the video because it's going to get spicy in here, and I'll catch you guys later. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.